Be like,
And let's see. Oh, there's a song. And good evening. You are listening to WOJB 88.9 FM, Woodland Community Radio. You are joining us on Anishinabe Sober Voices, a forum for the Anishinaabe people and communities to tell their stories about drug and alcohol abuse. And we'll be discussing drug and alcohol issues impacting Native people and providing resources to improve the quality of life for LCO tribal community. And joining me in the studio tonight is, of course, Steve Perry. How you doing, Steve?
Hey, I'm doing great. Mark.
Good.
Good to be back among the living.
Well, it's good to see. Your medallion is like huge. It's like 3 times the size of another medallion. I mean,
that's right.
It could be
what I did is I went out and I found the biggest medallion I could find, and I told her to make it a half-inch bigger.
Oh, just a half.
So I had bragging rights of the medallions.
Okay. So tell us who you brought in as our guest today.
Well, we have some people from the clinic. And we have Tina, Dr. Tina, and we have Amanda. And I always like Amanda's name because I love this song. Did you ever hear the song before?
Huh? I was named after the song.
No way.
The Waylon Jennings version.
Yeah,
not the Boston version.
Yeah.
I prefer Boston.
Oh, you
but
do?
It wasn't meant to be.
I like the Waylon Jennings.
I'm not much of a country girl.
Could you sing a few bars for us?
Amanda.
Oh dear. This is already going south.
All right. So Gina, what do you do at the clinic?
Okay, yeah, it's Tina.
Tina, I'm sorry.
No, you're good. You're good. So I'm a medical doctor. I'm an addiction medicine physician, and I'm one of the providers there that see patients and prescribe medications if needed for people with recovery or who want to be in recovery. And then Amanda works with me too. So tell us your credentials, Amanda.
Well, I am a nurse practitioner. I'm family practice certified. So that's been a little bit interesting. I won't bore all of you to tears, but so I do not have a background in addiction until the past year. So I have been lucky enough to work with Dr. Tina for exactly a year, actually this month. And I have been her understudy, better understanding addiction and how to help patients conquer it. So prior to that, I worked in family medicine, and I will admit that, I really didn't come into contact with addiction in the way that I do now, obviously. And retrospectively, I probably realized that people were coming in and were probably struggling with addiction, and I didn't really even recognize it.
Really?
Yes.
Okay.
So it really is
They
its
had a good way of
own.
hiding it, or?
Yes, and I think nothing against family practice providers, but until you are in the world that Dr. Tina and I are in, like you just can't see the whole picture. You just can't see that person the way that I believe that we see them. So it's really been like an eye opener. So I've been her understudy for a year, and it's been good. And we have one last plug for the clinic, and I'll stop. So I mean, any organization is always, up for improvement. But I feel like what Dr. Tina has started and what we've come to today has really become phenomenal. I can't say enough about our clinic. I think LCO should be very proud of us. I think they are. I'm really proud of us. We have a really good team, and I'm not really sure how we could make it much better, to be honest. But those are my thoughts.
Thanks. Yeah, I know that the folks that I work with out in the community, I know that they really love what's going on over there. And it's been a big change over the last 2 or 3 years. And I just know that they really support, community members support what's going on over there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And definitely in the whole Bajiki Wellness Center, we really want it to be a place where people feel welcome. because we want them to feel like there's privacy, that there's discretion,
Yep.
and that they can come and not be judged. So, we really try to work on, because we want people to come back. It doesn't really help if they come once and we never
Right.
see them again.
Sure.
They
Yeah.
have to. You have kind of that
Mhm.
first visit to really get them to buy in that this might actually be a place for them to feel comfortable coming back,
Yeah.
because they have to tell us some things that they're most ashamed about in their life. So
Yeah.
yeah,
I know that folks in the community appreciate it, and participants, patients, uh, whatever tag you put on them.
yeah,
One of the things that I know that needs to be clarified, and we all talk about it a lot, is there's a lot of misnomers out there in the community. One is we were just talking about a while ago, and that was we don't have magic wands,
hmm
okay, and that it takes all the different resources that are in the community, not just in the community, but in the addictions community, the addiction support community, to help, because there's no one answer, you know.
yeah. It's very true.
And one of the things I wanted to get clarification on myself, because I've had some questions about it, is that um, I know we talked before. There's no provision of methadone treatment uh, at the clinic, and I just wonder if you can talk a little bit about methadone and
Yeah, and
treatment, and
in some of the medication. Yeah,
yeah,
yeah, yeah. Yeah, yeah. And like what you just said is so true. I mean, there's not, and that's the thing that people have to be careful about. One of the things we learn in nursing school and nurse practitioner school and medical school is evidence-based medicine. Like we have
yep,
to follow what the evidence is showing is working, and so they do clinical studies, and you have to make sure the study's done right, and that they control for certain factors that might make this results, not really um, as powerful. So we
Mm-hmm.
practice evidence-based medicine, right? And so um, and that's kind of at the forefront of everything we do. We're not going to do something just because it sounds like a good idea, and that's what people have to be careful with when they may have their own personal recovery story, but what worked for them may not work for most other people.
Yeah.
It
Mm-hmm.
just it depends on um, your background, the support you have, where you live, just your personality type, like the coping skills you have, your motivation, your education level, whatever. It can be so many things. Your physiology, your genetics. But so just because something worked for one person, and that's what you see a lot with people maybe who had a problem, say with alcohol, and they were able to just kind of stop, right? Whereas somebody else who drinks isn't able to stop, and it's because some people's addictions are also more severe than others, right?
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
but even if you took, 10 people with if you could somehow control for the same severity of addiction,
Mm-hmm.
not all the same things are gonna work for all those 10 people. And, it's because there are so many factors like you said, and that's why you have meetings every,
yep,
Wednesday, and that's why people have to go to groups and meetings, and some people can do it without that support because they just needed to get on track with, maybe sometimes the medication is what people need, but most people do need more than that. But so
Sure. Yeah.
so there's 3 medications that we know are evidence-based to help with, like, say, opioid use disorder, right? So methadone is a medication that helps with people who, have a problem with opioids, and that's like pain pills, heroin, methadone, um, you know, um yeah, that's pretty much it, right? I think I hit all of them. And, so methadone is one of the FDA approved medications that is evidence-based that helps people stop using and abusing like heroin and opioids and pain pills. And then, you also have Suboxone isn't the other one, and then the other one's Vivitrol. And we offer Suboxone and Vivitrol. Naltrexone is the medication in Vivitrol, and then we have Suboxone, and the injectable form is called Sublocade. So we can talk more about those again later. But methadone is the one that we don't have here, and it's because it fully turns on the opioid receptor, so it is more of an abusable medication potentially. So methadone clinics are structured where people go in and get their dose every day, and it lasts a long time, so you only need to take it once a day to feel to keep the cravings down, so people don't want to use other, heroin or pain pills. And so, but that requires a lot of security. You have to have this whole setup. Like literally, I think they have like, oftentimes a security guard that's like there because the methadone has to be locked up. There's all these protocols that have to be followed. So we don't have that here because it's a whole different type of clinic, and it takes a lot of personnel to have that because you're required to also like have all these counselors, and they have to see their
Sure.
counselor all
Yeah.
the time, and we just don't have like the resources for it.
Resources,
Yeah. So
Mhm.
so there is a methadone clinic. I think the closest one is it in
Chippewa Falls.
Chippewa Falls. Yeah, I was gonna
Yeah.
say I'm always like Eau Claire or Chippewa Falls.
I think
But
so.
Chippewa
Yeah.
Falls, and so we do. There are some people that we get that have been on methadone before, but so methadone is evidence based. It does help. It's just that it's the problem with a lot of people here is that you have to go daily, like 6 days a week initially, and then eventually over time you earn the right to take some doses home. And you just
Okay.
it's a liquid. They just drink it
Mhm.
right there at the window, and then because they don't want people, they worry about diversion, which is like people selling
Right.
their doses. And so, if people are still using other drugs, they usually don't earn the right to get take home doses. So that's how methadone is different. It is a full agonist, meaning like you could overdose on it if you took too much of it.
Mhm.
Whereas like Suboxone's a medication that has a ceiling effect, so it's safer. In general, when people are using heroin and we give them Suboxone, they're not going to get high on it. It's not really abusable in that sense. And so we should probably talk a little bit more about that. Um, but, um, but before we get into that, I just wanted to make sure I answered all your
yeah.
questions. I mean,
Mhm.
addiction, it's a chronic relapsing condition. It's something that people can stop having relapses, stop using, but it's something that people always have to be kind of careful with and aware of, because once somebody has what we call a severe use disorder, like with alcohol and opioids and methamphetamines, is you can't control, like especially with alcohol because that's the one that is legal. If people have severe alcohol use disorder, they oftentimes can't ever drink again. It just
Mhm.
because they can't control the amount they drink. And a lot of people try, right? They're like, okay, I'm really only going to have, this much of the
Yeah.
bottle or one drink.
One
And
beer, one beer.
yeah. And then
Yeah.
some people
Mhm.
and then some people will do that 200 times before they like realize I
I
keep saying the
can't.
same thing,
Yeah.
It's escalating. It's
Yeah.
escalating.
Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah. And I mean, you've heard that, Amanda, right? People say similar.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, just my plug from working in primary care is just really helping people understand that unfortunately, like Dr. Tina says, this is a chronic disease. So not unlike diabetes and high blood pressure. And that, that's really hard for people to hear and I think wrap their head around, especially the loved ones of our patients, like to realize that this this may get better and maybe we can get them into sobriety, but this can come back and rear its ugly head. And like Dr. Tina
Mm.
also says, we talk to these patients. I mean, they have to be mindful about every decision that they make because one wrong decision
Yeah.
can get you, well, into the rabbit hole.
Mhm.
Um, so I mean, so just like patients when their diabetes is getting out of control, we're doing different things, whether that's with meds or lifestyle, just to get them back under control. And we're doing the same thing with addiction. So
Mm.
Yeah, no, and I
Yeah.
think that's a great point, Amanda, because that's what I think it's a good analogy to say that, I guess you might know better, Amanda, but when we talk about chronic diseases like high blood pressure or diabetes, what's actually the rate where patients actually do what they're told to do? Like, they have to change their diet, they have to exercise. How many of the people actually do everything that their doctor asks them to do,
yeah,
right?
not very many.
Or even taking
I shouldn't say
Me,
that.
me,
Yeah.
Okay, this guy over here
Right.
does.
But we don't look down so much on people with diabetes that do
We
that,
do
but we look
not.
down on people when they have an
Yes.
addiction and they end up having a symptom of their
Right.
addiction, and which is using.
Yeah,
And we
exactly.
and so we have, unfortunately there's a stigma about addiction that it's a moral failing, and I think it's really hard, even people who don't think that they have that, it's really hard for that not to sort of kind of influence the way you actually feel about stories
Yeah.
you hear or people in your life,
Yes, and then your responses, like, I agree. So, like, that's why Dr. Tina is so great because, I mean, you can't just have any old personality working in this job. Like, you really have to have someone who is compassionate and does not give up on people,
Yeah.
because there is that stigma, and I mean, these patients,
Mm.
we're not punitive. I mean, obviously, when people relapse or what we term return back to use, obviously those are, sad moments, and we go through those emotions with patients, but we have to help them pick up the pieces and get them back on track. We can't, fall into that gutter and stay down there.
Right,
Yeah.
and we can't, and you have to know too, like, we can't also come at them and point at them like we're their parent and saying,
Yeah.
"Why did you do this?" Because
Yeah.
Hmm.
they are already beating themselves up. Like, we
Yeah.
do not have to tell them what they did wrong. We can
Yep.
help them try to figure out how their thought process got them there or what did trip them up, because sometimes people do need help with, like, that insight into, like, okay, every time this happens, it's always when I've gotten into a fight with my girlfriend or my boyfriend, or,
Hmm.
Mhm.
or my mom, or,
Yep.
it's always when I think I can go hang out with this friend, and I always tell myself I'm not going to, use, but so, we can help with that part, but
What do you see as a trigger for these things? Are they emotional, psychological, or physical? Some people drink because they're trying to cover up physical pain,
oh
but
yeah.
then there's the emotional
Yep.
pains and psychological
Yeah,
Psychological
pains.
all
pain.
of those
What's
things.
Spiritual
what's the
Yeah.
pain. Yeah.
majority of it out there that you see? Who's
So
Well,
yeah, I
oh
mean,
no,
go ahead,
the
Amanda.
biggest thing that I've learned from patients is boredom. So, I mean, all of those are triggers, and Dr. Tina will explain it better. But wow, boredom is really a culprit.
Mm-hmm.
And in fact, I was thinking this today, and this is going off tangent, but man, if there was some way we could get like an activity center for LCO, maybe something, like the Jack Link's Aquatic Center. I mean, I just think that there just needs to be more to do, even for young people, to keep them busy. And other than like winning the lottery, I'm not sure how I would accomplish that for the LCO people. I would love
Right.
to,
Yeah.
but I'm just thinking like, what else can we do to help keep people busy and you know, interactive and yeah, but other things, Tina can touch on those.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I think the number one thing that I hear from patients is just the people that they've used with, and they have to cut off the people in their
Yeah.
life that are using. They can't
Right.
be around it.
Mm-hmm.
So the biggest trigger is being around the people and being around the drug, because um, you can have somebody where they are 100%, you know, 100% mean that they are not going to use and they're committed to it, and then
Yeah.
you put whatever their drug of choice, or as Diane says, of non-choice,
Yeah.
in front of them. They're a switch flips in their brain, and they don't. It doesn't make sense, and that's what I always say too: is addiction does not make sense. So people
Mm.
out there who are trying to understand their loved one who has an addiction or their own addiction, if it doesn't ever make sense. Like, there's nothing. I mean, it's a disease of delusion where people continuously fool themselves or come up with excuses of, like, okay, I'm really going to quit today, or this is the last time, or, you know what, I had a good day or I had a bad day, it's okay, I'm going to quit tomorrow, whatever it is. It's like there's a never ending array of
Wow.
excuses,
Yeah. Yeah.
and but you can actually really trick yourself into thinking that you mean what you're saying. You know what I mean? And like it,
Yeah.
it is like
Mm-hmm.
you really mean it. But
Yeah.
but the other triggers I'd say are the people, um, extreme emotions, like, just like I
Yeah.
said, get into a
Fights.
fight,
Mhm.
or just,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, especially family, like the people that you really care about. I mean, we have a lot of patients who sometimes their mom or dad is their biggest trigger, just because, they're already bashing heads with them over their addiction, and then, they feel like they're not understood. So, then they just, in addiction, we see a lot of people have that black and white mentality where it's either like things are good or they're bad, and there's not a lot of in between. And so they just immediately just say, screw it, I don't care. And so I talk to patients about that a lot, of just like not shooting themselves in the foot. Even if they do make a little mistake, like, just get back on track. It doesn't mean you have
Yeah.
to continue
Right.
using for weeks.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
But
Okay, we have
yeah.
a quick phone call here. I want to get them on the line just to see if they have a comment or question. Hello, caller. You're on the air at WOJB.
Is
Hello?
this me?
Yeah, it's you.
Okay, so I just have a question. Like, what sort of resources do you have for those family members who don't understand, who just tell their loved ones, why do you keep doing this? Why can't you stop?
Yeah. Yeah, that's a great question. Um, so once a month, Diane Sullivan is our AODA counselor. A lot of people in the community know who she is, but we're so lucky to have her. She's back now at the Bajiki Wellness Center, and she is doing a family program through her old employer Hazelton, but you can come to the Bajiki Wellness Center, or it's also offered online. I don't have the specifics of it, but if you were to call the Bajiki Wellness Center, we could give the information for this family program. It's free, and there is actually a Native American specific one, but I think anybody can do that as well. It gives a lot of information to families. It's really focused on the families and how you can actually deal with your loved one and best support them, and also not drive yourself completely crazy,
Mhm.
because it's so
Yes.
hard being a family member, because like I said, addiction doesn't make sense, and then the family's trying to help them and make sense of it, and there isn't any, it doesn't make sense. So so getting that support helps a lot. I mean, I have a child who's had addiction issues, and I actually did Hazelton's family program
Oh,
about in 2017, I think, and it helped me a lot, just realizing that it's okay that I actually have needs, and because it's always about this person,
Yeah.
yeah.
but then and you're not necessarily taking care of yourself, and sometimes they turn it on you, because what the classic thing is too is when you suspect something, what do? They right away want to pick a fight, or they say you're just being, you're picking on them or something, and to kind of deflect things. But you can learn to set boundaries with them and have rules, and so yeah, but it's hard, because what all I would tell family members too. So there is that resource, of course, too. Family is always welcome. We tell people that they can bring their family into with our patients, like if there's members that you want to talk to us, but you can also see me there, or the AODA counselor, or one of the therapists in our buildings yourself, just to talk about it too, because all the therapists are even trained in substance use, some, um, but it's really tough on families. I totally get it, because you feel completely helpless, and you
Mhm.
see somebody doing something that makes no sense. But all I can tell you is just don't give up hope. And there is that point where you can't, and you don't want to enable them, but you also, sometimes they do need you to help them when they're ready to receive that help, you
Yeah.
know. But
Mhm.
all I would say then is, yeah, just reach out to call the Bajiki Wellness Center, and you can get that family program information. It really has a lot of great information. Um, but and like I said, no one's beyond hope, and that person is still in there. Their morals and values are still there. Once the addiction kind of settles down, they are their old self again.
Yeah.
So
Did that answer your question, caller?
Yes, thank you for the work that you do.
yeah, thank
Yeah,
you.
thank you
Yeah,
for
thank
calling
you.
in.
Thank
One
you
of
for
the
calling.
things I might say about that too a little bit is that I always try to look on how families can help when there's a person that has addiction in the family. One of the things I think the general public has in their mind, unfortunately, a lot is that why did they relapse?
Mhm.
You know,
Mhm.
but relapse happens; it's part of the cycle.
It does.
And I think the thing that they need to be is be understanding and try to step back away from it a little bit and see what they can do that can be productive. Because otherwise, they can be that nagging person on the other end of the conversation
Yeah.
that may lead somebody into a relapse.
Well, yeah, and
Yes.
you're right. And it's so hard though, because I know as a family member, it's like you're so scared. Like you're afraid
Mhm.
that you're gonna be just taken through this whole thing again.
Yep.
And you thought, okay, because it takes you a certain amount of time to start to like trust it, right?
Yeah.
And then, they have a relapse, or they return to use, and so I what I try to, you know, the positive spin on it is I tell patients, I say, well, this is some information for us, right? It's like it's information that there's more work that needs to be
Yep.
done. And then you really try to look at what happened and what led to it, and then it is a clue that there are some other holes to kind of fill up, and so it doesn't happen again. And there are people that have long-term sobriety, but I mean, most people who are in recovery will tell you that they have to think about, things they do. It's not like you can ever just be like,
I know, going on 35 years for me, and I know I have to think about what could happen,
yeah.
I could go back, and just take maybe one drink or one puff or whatever
Right,
it is.
right.
Mhm.
Or gambling or shopping or whatever it is.
Yeah, whatever it is.
Well, and
Yeah.
that's the other thing, like you said, Amanda, is that, the people, there's always this, in general in addiction, there's kind of this idea that, people with addictions have a moral failing. Like, why don't they just make better decisions, right? But we understand that, the drug or alcohol, it hijacks the brain. It hijacks the reward system in the brain, where their brain just is not right. And we've seen that. And that's what you're seeing as a family member. Or like, this person is doing things that they would never do
Exactly.
if they didn't have this addiction.
Hmm.
And it's not who they are. That addiction is like taking over, and I know people will be like, well, that's just a cop out, because give me a break. But it really is true. I mean, once their mind is clear again, they're not, their addiction's under control, you have the old person back. I mean,
Yeah.
like I said, they still have their morals and
Yeah.
values. And so, we have to realize that just like any other medical condition, it is a medical condition. And like, I guess we're circling back to, like, one size does not fit all. And, um, just because, it's not normal for us to see people, like, say somebody's drinking really heavily or they're using heroin. It's not normal for us to see them one time and like, oh, they're done. They've never touched it again.
Correct.
I mean, it's normal that there's some
Yeah.
bumps in the road,
Oh, yeah.
and I have had people where the first time I saw them was the last time they used. But at the same time, I have patients where it was bumpy, maybe a couple months, and then they used for a little bit, and then a couple months more, and then over a year, finally they did stop using fully, or they stopped heroin, but they're still using meth.
Mhm.
And we keep working on that, but we have to meet people where they're at and be patient with them, because just that tough love, I mean, it has a place, right? Because you don't want to enable people, but it also sometimes is harmful.
Yeah.
And that's what you
Yeah.
have to try to
Yeah.
figure out, the
Sends them
boundaries.
the other way.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Triggers
But
them.
Right.
Yes.
exactly,
Mhm.
it can, because I mean, and, it's like if somebody's asking for help, I mean, help them. But like I said, I mean, yeah, don't give them money though. Give them, take them to their appointments. Help them
Yeah.
with, like,
Yeah.
but
Buy
Yeah.
them a hamburger.
buy them a
Yeah.
hamburger, buy them food.
Right.
But
Yeah. Money's
yeah,
a trigger too.
yeah. Don't give them, and don't leave your pain pills laying out, or
Yeah.
don't leave your alcohol laying out. You know what I mean? Because that's the other thing. We have patients where there's a problem with alcohol in the family, yet, everybody's sort of harping on, the daughter, but the mom and the brother are still at the house drinking a ton, and they're not really doing anything to help that person. You know
Mhm.
what I mean?
Or like you said, the one thing, like medication and stuff and keeping out, and it was like, I was in a family intervention one time, and I remember the one elder woman in the family said, well, I put him out to test him.
Oh, no.
Oh yeah.
no.
Yeah. Dr. Tina always
And
says,
I
don't
said,
test yourself.
What?
Yeah.
Oh,
That's a
dear.
bad idea.
I know.
Yeah. And I was gonna say,
Wow.
if anybody who's listening was interested, we have lock bags, and they're just bags, but you can
Right.
lock them.
Yeah.
But it's a deterrent, so you can put your medication in there, and then you'll know if somebody got into it, and so it is something you just want to
Yeah.
make it not easy for people.
Mhm.
And don't test people. Like, don't test people.
know.
And that's the biggest thing we say with addiction too. And that, because you'll have people say that, especially with alcohol, they'll be like, I went to the bar to test myself. It's like, no, do not, especially in early recovery. Like,
Yeah.
Yeah.
people around them need to help them. And so don't drink in front of them. Don't, help them have a sober environment. They need that, like, positive, healthy vibes. They need to, like, get new habits. And it takes a
Mhm.
while. I mean, think about, a lot of us, I was going to say, so one of the things to also think about when you're, feeling kind of, like you're judging maybe somebody who has an addiction is, if you smoke cigarettes, people don't think about it as the same thing, but it is the
That's an
world's number
addiction.
one addiction.
Yeah.
And, you, your cigarette, within 2 hours you have withdrawal. And so you're smoking constantly so you don't have withdrawal. And that's why you keep smoking. And that's why you can't stop smoking. And so if you're
Mm.
going to say to somebody, well, just stop, well, why don't you just stop smoking cigarettes? I mean, it is the same thing.
Yep.
And so, but people don't see it that way. They think cigarettes are different, and yeah, they just kill you slowly. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I guess you're not going to
Yeah.
drive intoxicated with cigarettes usually,
No.
but
Right.
and they don't change your behavior in such ways, but it really is the same thing. And I think we need to start thinking about that. Like the reason, cigarettes are a stimulant, nicotine's a stimulant.
Hmm.
But if you feel more relaxed after you smoke, it's because you're treating your withdrawal, because you're getting anxious because you're feeling withdrawal, and
Right.
then you
Yeah.
take plus it's good to just take deep breaths. We don't take deep breaths enough. Just do that without a cigarette though. Yeah.
So I have a question about the wild, wild west of medications that are being sold now. CBD is, supposed to be a really good product. It helps lessen pain. It's doesn't cure anxiety, but it really helps, bring that down. What what do you see in CBD and people who are using that? Is I don't think it can be abused because you really can't get high off of it. But is that possibly something in your tool bag that you would use for pharmaceutical type of treatment?
Yeah. Well,
Because again, it's not regulated. It's
yeah.
the Wild West.
Yeah. So
and it's
usually if
just
somebody's not taking CBD, it's something they've kind of pursued on their own. I mean, I haven't really seen a lot of solid evidence. I mean, you get again people saying that they think it helps. I don't think it hurts.
Yeah.
I don't think it's a harmful substance. We will see that people who are just taking CBD, it does have sometimes a small percentage of THC,
Mhm.
the psychoactive
Yep.
part of marijuana. And so sometimes it will show up on their drug screen as a positive drug screen. So that's the thing you just have to watch out for if you're using CBD and you need to have a drug screen that doesn't show anything. Um, so we do see that sometimes, but I don't think it's harmful. I just would have to look at more of the research on it.
Well, and I think the medical community hasn't really, took it seriously, and
Yes.
maybe it doesn't need to be taken seriously. It's just recreational, and that's all it is. But then you get into um, CBD, or no, what's the other one?
Delta 8,
Delta
Delta 8,
9,
and
and
yeah.
and those have a little more effect to them than what other would be.
Yeah. And I'll be honest, I'm not the expert in like Delta 8 and those medications. I just know that sometimes they are sold at some of the head shops, right? Like
Hmm.
even the
Yeah, here in
place in
town.
Hayward, right,
Yeah.
right. And there's, and then I'm told that they're not legal, but so I'm actually a little bit confused to be honest, but I don't really have a lot of patients that are using that because they're usually just using the real thing,
Right.
you know,
Yeah.
Yeah.
the flower, smoking the flower or wax or dabs. And I would just say that, the wax or dabs, the concentrated form is something I would recommend trying to stay away from just because it is such high THC concentration that's when we start to see people having problems with um, adverse effects of THC, like marijuana, which is, people can get a lot of anxiety. You can get um, substance-induced psychosis, like hallucinations from it.
Hmm.
And then I've even had a few patients. I think I've had 3 patients now who've had um, the cannabinoid hyperemesis syndrome, which is people that smoke a lot of marijuana. And they started seeing this initially when it became legal in Colorado. They would see people showing up in the emergency room, and we didn't know about this before because I guess people didn't usually smoke as much as they do now.
Right. Yeah.
But they get where they start getting nauseous and they vomit and they can't stop vomiting. The only thing that will
Hmm.
help them is taking a hot shower, and anytime they smoke at all, then they will throw up, and it's pretty miserable, and so the only thing that gets that better is you can't ever smoke again.
Wow.
So you don't if you really wanna be able to smoke, like, you don't want that to happen to you, so you really
Yeah.
don't wanna use super high concentration THC.
Well, and the problem is the marijuana on the streets and in the stores is so much more potent than it was in the 70s when I was using. It was
Right.
just like it's nuts. Not that I've experienced anything because I don't want to, try it ever again. But I was just told by the people who were selling it, this stuff is nothing like, Acapulco Gold that we
Yeah.
had in the 70s.
Yeah,
That
yeah.
was supposed to be the best, but this
Yeah.
stuff is like 4 or 5 times stronger.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and, when we like, with marijuana, we we have to we sort of have to pick our battles, but we do know this evidence shows that if people are able to kind of quit all their drugs of abuse, like including marijuana, they do better. And, and I would say the people that, patients that I've had that have kind of done the best have been people that eventually even stop using that. But,
Mm-hmm.
but definitely, like we were talking about, all the pieces of the puzzle that help people, the I just try to tell patients when we see them, the medication's a tool, but you need to get that sober support. The people that do best, like, go to the groups, they see AOGA, and then they eventually get a job. They have, a community that they're able to feel like they're a part of. We all need we all none of us are really going to be our happiest when we're just hanging out each day. Like, what am I going to do today? I don't know. I have
Yeah.
nothing to do.
Yeah.
That's when people get bored.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's when they get into trouble. That's when they end up
Mhm.
like, okay, that friend can come over because, and then you end up, so, people, we just do better, even if it's a part-time job, just having a routine and a schedule and feeling like you have a purpose, something to contribute.
Yeah.
I think people just,
I know that when people go through uh, substance abuse and want to get off whatever they're on, whether it be drugs, alcohol, or whatever, that sometimes, and I know I went through it, sometimes you just got to say goodbye to some friends.
Mhm.
And so one of the things that I think is important is to make sure that there's somewhat of a parachute, and that is that you have places in the community or people in the community that are willing to help those people and become new friends and all that are sober. And that's where it comes back to my whole, it takes a village to help a alcoholic or drug abuser, and other people need to step up and they need to say, here's my phone number,
Mm-hmm.
and maybe you want to go to the show with me on Tuesday, or do you like basketball? I'm going to go to this basketball game, or I'm going to the gym and work out. You want to go work out with me? Finding all these diversions for those people,
healthy diversions.
healthy
Yeah.
diversions,
Healthy
so they don't
Yeah.
go back to doing what they were doing before. And it's really hard because a lot of the times I hear from people, well, I just don't have any friends. I don't have any friends anymore. Da 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 da. And then the next thing I know, I see after a while, I've tried to hook them up with people, whatever. And if it works, it works. But if it doesn't, then I see, I see that problem with them saying, well, I don't have any friends. And so they go back to the wrong people.
Mhm.
Oh yeah, I mean,
You know?
like I said, boredom, but
Yeah, boredom,
loneliness
definitely.
too is a big part of addiction, right? Because addiction is really isolating, and people tend to, they keep so much, they're hiding so much from everybody, and they have a lot of shame, and that's why it's really important for them to have some trusted people too that they can talk about how they're really feeling, and like even if they're having a craving, it's not always the best thing to tell like your mom who's been on your case about, your
Exactly.
use. You can't be like, "Mom, I'm having a," because the mom's going to freak out,
Yeah.
because, as a parent, I totally get it. Like, you are scared. Your worst, case scenario in your head is that your kid's going to die. And, sometimes you're already preparing yourself for that, and and that's sad.
Mm-hmm.
But, you have to just realize that people it doesn't matter who you are, as introverted as you think you are, and that you don't need anybody, especially you guys who think you're so tough that you just need to suck it up all the time because that's what you learned. We're all human. We need
Yeah.
connection. Like they always say, the opposite of addiction is connection. And you have to feel like you are a part of humanity. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? And that you're
Mhm.
understood.
You have a purpose.
You have a purpose.
Yeah.
And that's why, I mean, honestly, our job is rewarding because I feel like I get that from my job. Like I get to connect with patients every day, and it's an honor that they let me into their lives, and that I mean,
Mhm.
they're helping us, as much as we're helping them, I think, because I feel like, at least I feel like I have a purpose. I can, it makes me feel like I have a place in this world when I can make those connections with people. And that's what, people who've been in that cycle of addiction, they're just, they haven't necessarily had those healthy connections. But Amanda, how many times you've heard somebody say, I don't know anybody who doesn't use?
Yeah.
More than I'd like to admit. So yeah, no, I agree. Like you have to find your tribe. So initially, like at the recovery clinic, like we become their tribe, and then hopefully they find a
Yeah.
healthy tribe outside of us
Yeah.
as they work on their
Mhm.
recovery and build that recovery capital.
Yeah, and I think the more people we can even get sober, and the more people that step up and sort of like become a mentor to other
Yes.
people
Yep.
because
Yeah.
I have had young men especially say, I don't see anybody in my life that there's no one that has what I want. Like, because they're only living in this small world where they just think everybody uses. But, you know, I mean, my son
Because
used
the
to,
world they came from, everybody did
yeah.
use. So it was,
My son used
you
to say
know.
that in high school. He'd be like, Mom, everybody smokes marijuana. And I'm like, no, just the people you were, but I kind of,
Right.
he actually
Yeah.
got me believing that like most of the kids smoked. And then, you kind of read the statistics and it's like, no, you're in the minority actually.
Yeah.
There is life
Where we
outside of
grew up.
that. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, there are a lot of people that don't use.
Yeah.
And that's the
Um,
thing about getting clean and staying sober is you really can't go back to that circle of friends, nor how do you deal with going back to a home
Yep.
where the relatives are users, and that's
Yep.
the only place you have to live at that moment. How do they get help and strength for that? I mean, you really have to get out,
Mhm.
and that's the hardest thing with family. You don't want to offend anybody in the family, but
Nope.
they're all the ones that are giving you what you don't want or what you don't need,
Yep.
and
Well,
saying it's okay, here, have another beer, you'll be all right. And it's like, no, there's no recovery there.
no, it's true. And, and that's the thing is, a lot of people are sort of waiting for other people to help them. And like,
Yeah.
and we all need help. Like you can't battle addiction like alone because if you're able to, it really probably means your addiction wasn't too bad. You know what I mean? Because most people need help. And those are the people that we see is that they've already tried like 10 times, 20 times, or maybe 2 times, or, or tried to cut down, and realize that they can't do it. And that's why we're there to try to give people some hope because they're in a cycle where they really don't know how to stop. And they honestly sometimes don't even know that they can stop. They really don't know that it's possible.
Yeah.
And you have to kind of tell them, but that, yes, this is, we try to explain what's going on in their brain and that they're not just bad people. And it's not a willpower thing.
No.
It really isn't. I mean,
No.
if your brain works, the better your brain works, the worse your addiction potentially could be, because you have
Mhm.
memories, you remember things, you remember smells, you remember songs that when you were using, and your brain starts squirting out dopamine just with some of these triggers that are subconscious. Even you don't even realize that you're being triggered until all of a sudden your anxiety's up, and our job sometimes is to point out to people like, your anxiety, okay, let's figure out if this is like like more like cravings, or is this actually just like regular anxiety,
Yeah.
because they go together a lot,
Yeah.
and we had somebody who came back from treatment and, she was feeling rock solid at treatment, because you can't use at treatment or even in jail, right? It's
Right.
like I can't
Yeah.
use, so like I'm good. I think I got this. And then, as soon as they get into town or on the res, they're like all of a sudden their anxiety's going up, and they don't even know what's going on. And
Hmm.
and then,
Yeah. I've seen
and,
that many times.
you know.
And it surprises them. And then
Yeah.
thankfully they come
Well,
right to the recovery clinic and they're sort
yeah.
of in a state and
Yeah.
you see that realization on their face that wow, this is shaky. This is harder than I thought it was going to be. And that's where the real work also starts, unfortunately.
Yeah, and then they feel
Yeah.
like they somehow aren't as strong as they thought they were, and we have to explain them, no, like this is normal. Your brain works. Like, it's going to just take time, and choosing different paths with like, okay, you feel this way, and instead of doing what you used to do, which was like the easy, you know, the well-worn path in your brain was to just go use. You have to start creating a new path in your brain, a new path, and it becomes easier to go down that path the more you purposely choose to go down that way. So, but it's, yeah, and it takes sometimes somebody else kind of helping you see like those patterns, because it's not. But the first patient I ever saw at LCO, she's one of the rare ones where she's been sober since day one, but she can't talk or see any of her family. She's had to like,
Yeah.
and luckily she has a partner and some kids and, her own little life, but it's really sad for her still. It's really hard, but you know, the mom's still using, the brother's still using, she can't be around them. And
Yeah.
it's, and,
Yeah.
and it takes time for people when they are first making these new decisions for people to like stop bothering them because, they still people are still thinking, oh, because a lot of times when people have tried to stop using, they've already said a lot of times, like, yep, I'm going to get sober. And then people in their life have seen that it didn't work.
Yeah.
So I always tell people too, when they are first getting sober, that your family's not going to believe you because they can't see inside your brain. Like they don't know that this time is actually different. They're going to be afraid and assume that's going to be like all the other times.
And they're going to be enablers.
Yeah. Well, yeah. And though that's a big trigger for people when they're actually feel like they're doing really well, but the people around them are like assuming or accusing them of using.
Yeah.
And I get it from a family perspective. Like you are afraid to trust,
Trust is consistency over time.
Right. Right.
Never being inconsistent.
No, and that's why I tell people, I just tell them, listen, over time, your family's going to see it because they're going to hear like the aunt's going to say, oh, I saw him. He looked good. Oh, yeah, I saw him too. He looked good. I saw him like last week. He looked good. And then eventually they start to believe that maybe this is real, but it takes time. And that's one of the things that will get people to return to use is they just are like, no one believes me. Why am I even doing this? But, so that's kind of that black and white thinking though, too. They have to but it's really hard. And I wish, like you said, I wish we had a magic wand,
I know.
but the medications that we have are the best thing we have now. And they really do work. Like Amanda, can you kind of say, like, even with Suboxone, like, what have you seen with patients and what do they say about it? And what do you see?
Oh, I can't speak highly enough about the medications. They absolutely work. I mean, I would say that I'm favored equally between Suboxone, or the injectable form Sublocade, as well as Vivitrol. And we use them for opioid use disorder. The Vivitrol is also used for alcohol use disorder. I mean, I can't say enough about it. I wish I had invented them and not to get financial gain, but because like I see it every day how well they work. So patients definitely feel more normal. It helps them make better choices, and then they're on the proper road that they want to be on. And the meds are easy to use. It's not difficult. The one thing that I think the meds really help with is reduce anxiety. And they're not anxiety meds. I mean, that's not what they're pharmacologically meant to do. But I mean, I think it's probably, many things, just them knowing that they have it on board, that they can't or they shouldn't use, and I think it helps and it reduces cravings. And then that often reduces anxiety. I mean, there are many factors that, you just see people have this like appearance of relief. And then it's interesting to watch their brain sort of change when they're on these meds, because then they come back to you and now we've got them on the proper dose, and their cravings are basically non-existent, and they're looking at me and they're like, wow, like I guess I'm gonna go to school, or like I applied for a few jobs, or I think I want to become an AODA counselor, which we've had a few patients who have expressed like becoming AODA counselors, which is super cool. Maybe they'll be working alongside Dr. Tina and I in a couple of years. But that's been like the most fun. The meds do work, and I know that we could go on for an hour talking about medications, because then there's this sort of subset of people and patients who are against medication. Obviously, we're pro medication. That's part of the evidence-based treatment that we're doing. It's not more important than the other things like the AODA, the therapy, whatever it is, the groups that people need. But man, the meds really do help.
Gives you that extra little bit just to get you past that point. And then as Steve knows, the groups, the talk therapy, that's the other part of just reprogramming your brain to respond to life's we all we go through you're still going to end up going through some real painful things, but now you're going to retrain your mind not to react in a certain way and be able to go through that, plus the support groups, you have other people around you that are supporting you.
Yeah, no, exactly. And that's what the medications made. Like what we see in early recovery, why they're so important is that they help just stabilize people. They help stop the insanity. You know what I mean? It's like,
they do.
Stop. And then it actually, the medications are what help them like actually come back for their appointments. And, you know what I mean? Because and then because what people will tell you is they wake up in the morning and they're like, there's like, especially people who are using heroin and meth and stuff like that, but especially heroin, they wake up and they're like, I'm like, it's like such a relief that they know they're not going to be sick that day, and that they don't have to figure out how to not be sick, because that's the thing that is also the misunderstanding about addiction and even alcohol use,
They are
drug
tired of
drug
sick.
use,
Yeah.
is that they're not out. I mean, in general, once people get a severe use disorder, it's not enjoyable anymore. They're miserable and they're stuck in the cycle. It's not like party, like woohoo, I'm
Right.
having a great time.
Mhm.
They're literally drinking or using so they're not getting sick. And it's miserable and they're stuck and they don't know how to get off the hamster wheel that is moving way too fast. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Mhm.
And it's so that's the other thing about addiction is that no, I mean, Amanda and I've never seen anybody that like purposely got themselves addicted to something. It's like again this delusional thing where you just never think it's going to happen to you.
Right.
And with
Yep.
alcohol, obviously it sneaks up because there are people who
Yeah.
can normal drinkers, right? And then before you know it, you're stuck in the cycle where you're drinking more and more and more and more, and you're getting away with
Mhm.
it. And then before you know it, you're not getting away with it anymore.
Yeah.
And then with opioids too, I mean, it seems like no one just starts using heroin. It's like they start usually with this normal story is they were on either a prescription or sometimes they got pain pills from a friend or something. And then in some kids, like if teenagers will use it like to party, and then once a week, then maybe twice a week, and then 3 times a week. And then before they know it, they're feeling sick if they don't use, and they're realizing they feel better when they take the pills, and then it takes them a while to realize that they're actually addicted to them. And then those pills get super expensive and they can't find them. And opioid withdrawal
Yeah.
is miserable.
Mhm.
So then what's cheaper and more available around here, unfortunately, is heroin. And that's how people use heroin. No one ever says they're going to use IV either, intravenously. Like that is a line that most people say, I will never do that. But then eventually their addiction gets worse
Yeah.
and they need more and more and their tolerance is going up. And so if they use IV, it's more effective. And so it's always like these lines that get crossed that people never intended to cross. So
So
before
talk
you
about
yeah,
the fentanyl element
yes.
to our drugs that we're using and how they're getting introduced and we don't even realize they're in there. How can you handle
Well,
that?
so I guess basically, just around here, I was saying heroin because that's what we say, but it's all fentanyl. Almost 99% of what we see is fentanyl because we do a drug screen on every single person.
Mhm.
And so I think the community
Now,
now knows that
but
it's
are they
all fentanyl.
using other drugs
Oh,
that are laced with fentanyl, or are they taking fentanyl directly in on
right. The
purpose?
heroin is typically not actually heroin.
Okay.
When people are being sold heroin, it's just fentanyl that's maybe cut with other
Cut way
stuff.
down. Yeah.
Yeah, we're rarely seeing actually heroin because heroin looks a specific way on a urine drug screen, and we rarely see that. I mean, like barely ever. Like I just told her, I said I saw one the other day, but
Hmm.
we'll go a month without seeing any
Mhm.
heroin actually in somebody's urine, and we do on every single visit. So it's all fentanyl. We have fentanyl test strips at Vajiki that you can get. If you come in and you just say, I need some fentanyl test strips, we can give you some. Um,
So that
but
they can test their own drugs at
yeah,
home
yeah,
or in
yeah,
their
like
privacy.
what you would do is you would, I think, put some of the drug with a little bit of water in a cup and then dip this test strip in there. But assume any heroin out there is fentanyl, because it is. Um, but we are finding more people who have just said they only use meth, but there was fentanyl in there, and
Yeah.
Mhm.
so you have it can be laced with things, but apparently most of the fentanyl comes from Mexico. It's the
Yeah.
cartel,
Mhm.
and it's a big money business, and so and fentanyl tends to be in areas that are lower socioeconomic, place. It's probably not what the rich people in Los Angeles are using. They probably actually have heroin, but around here on the reservation, you get fentanyl. And I do have patients. Usually, if we see heroin, it's actually people who'd just been in the Twin Cities,
Yeah, that's
so
when
they
I've
didn't
seen
actually
it
get it from
when they've
here.
traveled.
Yeah,
Mhm.
when they've traveled.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So yeah, so it's really, and obviously fentanyl doesn't take much, and that's responsible for the vast majority of the opioid overdoses. And so we are big about giving out Narcan. If anybody wants Narcan,
Yeah.
you can come to
Mhm.
Vajiki. We have Narcan.
Yeah.
I can also write anybody a prescription that wants it with lots of refills, and you can get them. LCO has the nasal kind that are really easy to use, but if we can always tell you how to use them. And with fentanyl, it usually takes two of the nasal Narcans come in a box, and it usually
Yep.
takes what we're told by the paramedics is like 4 to 6 of them to bring someone out of an overdose with fentanyl, but it could take more. And so you want to have a couple
More.
boxes around, And I do think it's helped because we've gotten a lot out into the community, and I know we've saved, that Narcan has saved, people's lives because we've been told by patients that come back that it was used. But if anybody needs Narcan, we have it. We have a grant that Dottie Crust got for us that we have lots of Narcan, so it's a really good thing. And it's harm reduction. Harm reduction as a place. We know we're not encouraging people to use more. We just want they're going to do it anyway, and so let's make sure people don't die.
Yeah, they don't want to die.
It's great that the test strips are available. I wasn't aware of that.
Yeah, we got those not super long ago. Marie, Basty, and Dottie, I think we're involved in getting those. So we have some at Bajiki and at the recovery clinic. We're at the Bajiki Wellness Center. There's a main entrance. You can use either one of them, but the recovery clinic has a side entrance, and so you can go in either way, and we can give you some. But definitely the heroin is fentanyl, and then who knows what else is in some of the other things. And so that's what I would just caution anybody out there is just you never know what you're actually getting. I mean, we even had somebody tell us that they were sold parsley once for their marijuana. I mean, so
I think they smoked it too.
Yeah, we don't have parsley test strips, but
and then how many people who have overdosed on fentanyl knew that they were taking in fentanyl? How many purposely overdosed on fentanyl?
No,
no one wants to die.
No, but let me also say this though: is the vast majority of people we talk to who overdose, because most of the patients that we've seen have had an overdose who use heroin or fentanyl. I mean, some people will come to us and say fentanyl is my drug of choice, but most people will say heroin, but they're really using fentanyl. So they're kind of used interchangeably because the supply is fentanyl. But most people know now. But when people overdose, it's not like they did anything different than they usually do. Like, people aren't stupid. Like, they don't want to die. They don't want to overdose. So they can sometimes just do the exact same thing that they always do, but the supply is more concentrated. Like, you just never know.
Right. Yeah.
And so, sometimes that's why when I was in the Twin Cities, there would be all of a sudden at Hennepin County Medical Center, like a rash of like a bunch of overdoses, and it's because there was a supply that came in that was,
a certain
higher percentage of fentanyl or whatever, and so that like I said, I mean, people don't I've had patients who use heroin who say that would never happen to them. They would never overdose, and they think people that overdose are stupid somehow.
Right.
But it's not the case. It's people that are they don't want to die. They're being careful. They do the same amount, maybe even less, and they overdose. It's always it's accidental.
Sure.
And so that's why you just never know, and that's why people shouldn't use alone. It's good to have Narcan around. Even if somebody comes knocking on your door, I mean, you never know. Even if you don't know somebody who uses, it doesn't hurt to have Narcan just in case. In case you might be at a grocery store and somebody's, needs it. So it's always good to kind of get some, there's a lot of good resources online about, Narcan too. You can read, but we have it. And I don't know what else, Amanda.
I think that's everything.
Come on, we got 2 minutes.
Oh, 2 minutes.
2 minutes.
Okay, so what's new with the Bajiki? What can we
and I was going to say too, Amanda says she was my understudy, but she completely knows what she's doing now. You've got to stop having those excuses. No, but Amanda's great. I think a lot of people know that I'm there, but Amanda is there, and she's wonderful. Like, she is passionate, and she's definitely in the right. We were so lucky to get her.
We're lucky to get you. So yeah, no, I agree. Like, so I think a lot of people didn't really realize that, but we need to have two of us. I mean, what if Dr. Steck wants to take a day off? Or like one time you broke her ankle, and I don't think she missed like a day of work. Like, she had surgery. Like,
I think I worked one day at home, and then I was just on a knee scooter. So a lot of my patients remember that.
Oh yeah,
that was before I came. And then the other thing is, we will see couples, and sometimes maybe both of them don't want to see me. We'll have to try to separate them. Like, one member can see Dr. Tina, and one can see me.
Yeah.
Some people, they just want that privacy. So it's important to have two of us, and it's growing. I mean, the program's growing, which is it's good. I mean, it's good and bad, but it's good. we're just
Yeah.
reaching out to a lot of people.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
Serving more people.
Yeah, and I
Yeah.
know and we did notice, like, even today, I had a lot of people not show up, and I think that happens with the holidays, but, um,
Mm,
just try to get your loved one in to see us,
Yeah,
and
we're
Yeah.
there.
give them rides, at least to their appointments,
Yeah.
if
yeah.
even if you're not happy with them, and we're always happy to, I mean, sometimes we have to even sign releases of information, for their family, so they family knows they're coming, and, um you know, we understand it's a hard road, and I hope down the road, like, really quickly, even methamphetamine, we don't have a medication that takes away methamphetamine craving so much, so we really have to try to just work on their mental health and get them engaged in sober support. So,
Yeah. Very cool. What's the phone number that people can call
yeah.
for the general number to the Jiki Center?
Oh, I don't know the general
Uh,
number, but the recovery clinic
okay,
number
recovery clinic.
is
Yes.
715-558-7899.
Yes.
So
I was gonna say
558-7899 is the recovery clinic. And yeah, I'm sorry.
that's the number.
I don't know
That's
the
Yeah.
other
to
number.
call.
That's all right. We got a
Yeah,
number there.
do the 7899.
Plus, we have
We can
numbers.
transfer you up front. Yeah.
Yeah, we have
Yeah.
numbers on our screen as well for anyone who needs to talk to Mary Ellen Baker or Steve. We have their phone numbers on the screen. Thank you for joining us. This has been a lot of information. It's not overload, but it was great to
Yeah.
hear some
Thanks
of
for
that.
having us,
So,
and we're happy to come back
Yeah,
sometime.
really. Thanks for coming.
Yeah.
yeah.
Thanks for coming.
All right. We're going to go back to powwow music now with Tom Kane.
Been jamming ever since, man. So kind of I used to come up to drum song when I was young and used to come up there with my Uncle Mike on the bike. We'd always play like an awesome set of tunes. Sometimes they'd ask us to do live songs and we'd perform live songs and get a couple guys up there, man. But I'm actually doing this from the house here. So we're going to get you guys rocking, man, with some jammers. Here's Battle Nation, Algoma University.